G'day, America. It's one of your good buddies here from Australia, Chewburger84. And you know what, son? I feel like it's time that we probably have a talk. And it's not that I'm mad. It's just that I'm really disappointed. Actually, that's not true. I am actually very mad. More than cranky with you guys at the moment. It is no secret that the world is currently on fire. And it is all because of the actions of America and another country who I'm going to choose not to name right now, because here in Australia, they have changed our laws recently that you have to be very careful in the way that you are critical of this particular country without being accused of a very severe anti-racial, anti-religious slur, even though you are not commenting on that group at all. And I don't feel like I've got the budget for the fine. And personally, I don't think that I have the will to go to jail just to say that magic word. But you all kind of know who I'm talking about, right? You good buddies over there on the other side of the world. Now, while this is going on, you are surging petrol or gas, as you guys call it, prices through the roof. And I know that you are sitting there gloating, well, you know, we're self-sufficient, man. We don't need anything from anyone in the world. We've got just enough gas right here. We're going to be fine. While the rest of the world didn't have that. In fact, most of Australia's emergency fuel reserves are actually parked in America right now. A decision that I think is very, very foolish that our government has made. One of many in regards to the way that Australia has made ourselves so reliant on so many countries over the years that we have backed ourselves into a corner that was just waiting for someone to drop us into some hot water. But America, I didn't think you were going to do it to us. I thought we were good friends. But the world is on fire because the Strait of Hormuz is closed. We have oil tankers can either not get out through either fear or genuine risk of being blown up by the Iranians in a war of choice that has been started potentially illegally, even by the American Constitution, although that has been butchered over the years with more and more amendments to grow and consolidate power to the president and his extended office, where they can bypass Congress for the ability to go to war. It's phenomenal how much America rails that they will never have a king ever again after George many, many years ago, when effectively this man has been able to bypass Congress to send you into a war that has already cost you tens of billions of dollars in its first literally couple of weeks. Now that we're sitting at nearly a month, I have no idea about how much money you guys have already spent as the American taxpayers. Part of me wants to feel bad for a lot of you guys, except that it's hard for me to do so. Because for me, when I grew up on American television. I grew up on American cartoons. I grew up buying hook, line, and sinker because more of my exposure to the world was through the American lens. You know, everything in the 1980s, 1990s, America was the good guys. I grew up on the Travolta Broken Arrow era of movies where you guys were out there defending the world from terrorists. You were sacrificing. You were putting yourselves on the line. You were the good guys in my book. But then I started to grow up. I started to see more of the world. I started to hear about more of the world through an unfiltered lens. I got to see more of it because of my travels around the world for personal and work, meeting more people and hearing different stories and different perspectives. You start to question some of these things. But the America, Iran, and the other guy war is where the balance, in my opinion, has well and truly tipped. Probably a little bit before that, considering the funding that has been going to what many scholars and I guess the rest of the world who have eyes have agreed is a genocide in a country very, very close to that other country. And Americans have supported this. They have defended this, the deaths of tens of thousands of innocent civilians, as well as militants, of course. Those guys arguably did deserve it, but the women and children and the kids did not. Financially, militarily, you guys have made that happen. But this decision to go in with no clear path to victory boggles me because it doesn't even seem smart. There's no veil, there's no outward lie that's held up for longer than 8 seconds when really held their feet to the fire. You guys said it was, well, they've got weapons of mass destruction. And we all went, I feel like we heard that before quite a few times. I think we all sent people into that war because of that lie that's since then been exposed as a lie and there's been no repercussions for the US. So color me skeptical when we get to this situation and we're hearing the exact same thing again. We have to go over there because they are weeks away from nuclear weapons. In less than a year, when Trump and the other country were sitting there in front of the entire world saying, we completely, wait, how does he do it? We completely obliterated everything they've got. No one obliterates like me, folks. Their entire nuclear program. You got rid of it. It's done. It's gone. It's finished. Go home. And you did for about 5 seconds until you rearmed, sent troops, and here we are again. You are bombing the living Christ out of Iran. Iran has responded, and you can argue a lot about the way that they have responded on some of their Gulf neighbors. Part of me understands why they would hit any country that is allowing American bases to attack from their launch platforms. But at the same time, those countries directly themselves are not at war with Iran. So I think that there is a debate about that particular response. I definitely feel the GCC has been pumped way harder than they deserve to be. But the reality is the world is paying that price. And what is really frustrating about this, my friends in America, and even some of my friends in Australia, is this week we have this vast criticism, now that it's looking very apparent that this war has not gone the way that the American warhawks have wanted, where they said, we're going to come in, we're going to bomb them, then we're going to go home. But it didn't work out that way. These guys fought back. These guys are fighting the Vietnam guerrilla warfare style in 2026. They've clearly been watching the guys in Ukraine fight against a superior military force with a lot less toys, with a lot less money, and doing really, really effective things, surprisingly, against billion-dollar missiles and evading multi-billion-dollar defense platforms. But it's really disappointing to hear that now that it's not going so well, you're asking for help. You didn't consult us when you went in, and that's okay. That's your right. You're America. You can do what you want, right? That's how it goes. Yeah. And you did. But now that it's not going so well, now you're like, hey, where's the rest of the world? This is your fight too. You got to come help out. And then we had Trump today coming out on social media. Well, obviously he was in a briefing at the time in the US. And he had this to say about Australia and our commitments to America by not participating in this war. Not great. I was a little bit surprised about Australia. See, the thing is, we've followed Trump and the Americans a few times already. Actually, Trump, not so much, but America, we've been following you guys into conflicts for a long time. And what I keep seeing all over social media right now is here in Australia, we have this boomer generation who are obviously still very much in their early 2000s, where we're in this post 9/11 world. And they're still like, no, if they're Muslims, they're automatically bad. So they're coming out and posting these things, as are ex-prime ministers like Tony, I was going to say Tony Hawk, but we don't have a skateboarding PM. That would have been awesome and way better than the Tony that I'm trying to remember his name. He's literally so much of a twat that I can't actually, it's Tony Abbott, I know this. So Tony Abbott came out and said, we're an absolute disgrace because we will not follow America into this war. That we are letting them down, that we are a disgrace, and that we are not doing enough to defend America's interests. What the hell, man? Like, how are we not? We were never consulted about this war. It is not our fight. Then they say it's not going well. We want you to come help. And now we're really disappointed. And I keep seeing guys like this in Australia who tend to be boomer generation, quite well off, never have military service, never going to fight in the military, usually have properties of their own, and probably have investment shares in some sort of oil platform, let's say. They're doing just fine. They have a lot of vested interest in this war. They have no idea and they have no stake other than what's about to hit our country, which is this massive oil shortage, where now there's being debates about whether we need to semi-shut down again the same way we did during COVID-19. And we all saw how unbelievably disastrous that was for small businesses in Australia. We saw the greatest upward trajectory of wealth redistribution that this country and the world has ever seen. The rich did get richer during COVID-19. And you better believe, folks, that the rich are absolutely going to get nothing but richer during this crisis. Okay? These multinationals, these military industrial complexes, these oil barons, these politicians, they are all in on it and they are all going to rake a massive big bank. But the point of the story is here in Australia, you have this one block of people who are going, we're not doing enough. We should be over there sacrificing Australian lives for America the way we always have. They're our friends. We should be doing what they want. Eventually, and this is where I see mateship, okay? If you are truly good friends with someone and you see them over and over and over making bad choices that are not only in your worst interest, but in the worst interest of your friend, if you are truly their friend, you will have the balls to stand up and say, mate, you know I love you, right? You know I do. But where you are going with this, I can't follow you. This is too far, right? Day one of this campaign, you bombed a school and you killed well over 100 innocent schoolgirls. And you are trying to wash that under the rug with absolutely no accountability. That's not something the good friend that I remember when I was growing up would do. That's a disgraceful thing. You would have gone to war to stop a country from doing something like that. So I think more Australians need to be stepping up right now and ignoring those side voices and saying to America, mate, we can't go with you on this one. What you're doing is wrong, right? Now, I hear the justification. I get it, where they say, well, they're persecuting their own people. And there is absolutely evidence of that. There is absolutely evidence that if you are not of the same religious sect as the ruling class in Iran, you are absolutely persecuted. They have absolutely stolen the rights of people in that country. They have absolutely assaulted, killed, and what have you, people who are not following the rules of that nation. And that is disastrous. And if I believed for a second that that was the true motivation and that that was the absolute end goal for the Americans, maybe not the other country, I don't really buy their story about why they want to be there, maybe I could support this. But when they say that it's weapons of mass destruction, except they're not really there, there's no proof, then they say that they were negotiating in bad faith when, again, our good friends in America, halfway through the negotiations, began this attack. The same way they did last year, where they not only broke peace negotiations to allow the other guys and then say that they greenlit it themselves because they were real clever and sneaky, that while they had gathered all of the peacekeepers in an ally nation in Qatar, they hit them as well. All right, they have broken their peace negotiations twice. You guys, our American friends, your word doesn't mean a lot to other countries right now. Because when you say we are here under the banner of peace and we want to find a deal, you don't mean it. You're just trying to buy time for a carrier group to get close enough to launch missiles, but just far enough away that you're untouchable, so that no American lives will be at risk. Because that's the message that's out there to the world, is that no other lives matter than American lives. No other sovereignty of a nation matters except for two countries, America and the other guys. Anyone else, you're allowed to breach their sovereignty, like Venezuela. Now you're going after Greenland, right? It's on the back burner, but I'm sure you're going to loop back to your greatest hits on that one soon. Now you're threatening to annex Cuba. I'm going to have the great pleasure of being able to take Cuba. You know, no one's done it before, but I'm going to do it, folks. Right? That's what's coming. Like America just takes stuff now because they can. It's like, well, we've got the biggest dick in the room and we can choose who and how we fuck with it, folks. Ridiculous. Crazy. I really need to work on a Trump impression if we're going to do this. It's really hard to hear that. But then to have your president and all these Americans flooding social media pages going, oh, Australians, what are we even doing with these guys? What do they actually do for us? This relationship doesn't work out. If they're not going to come over, let's just cancel every deal we have with them because we're giving them everything. They're making billions and billions, way more than us. It's a detriment to American priority by dealing with Australia if they don't come help us. I am a moron. I wouldn't say uneducated, but I wouldn't say I'm a genius, right? If we have a look at our relationship between America and Australia, we can see that we export to America around $23.8 billion in 2024. Let's assume it's the same ballpark for the last couple of years. On the flip side of that, though, there is a significant amount more that comes in from America. Okay, we buy significantly more from you than you buy from us. Some people with half a brain will call that a trade surplus. Now, your gingivitis president has gone out there and hit us with a 15% tariff when he said that tariff was only going to be for nations who did not have a trade surplus, who were quote unquote taking advantage of America, which we were not doing, right? You guys make more from us and have benefited from the free trade agreement that we have had between our nations for a long time. Then you hit us with a 15%. And we, being in our leadership positions in this country, a giant bunch of pussies, have rolled over and eaten that dick, right? They just sit there and said, fine, no problems. We will not do that back because we want to keep our good friends in America happy. So we ate a 15% thing. And I know a lot of Aussie retailers then just passed on that 15% to you Americans. So that kind of ends up being you paying for it. Then that went away because it was ruled illegal. By the way, where is our tax refund, Donnie? Because with your illegal trades, man, taxes, don't you have to give us back these tariffs? Let's figure it out after the Iran thing, right? You guys get significantly more in trade from us. And then right now, even after that, right, even though we're good friends, you've slapped us with another 10% temporary import surcharge for the foreseeable future just because you can. Does that seem like a good friends move to you? Does that seem like a good buddies? Do you think that's going to get us on your good side and want us to step up? That you are, again, flinging that down at us saying, we deserve more from you than you give to us. And again, our pussy government rolled over, sucked on that chode, swallowed deeply, and you guys are winning that. On the other side of that argument, we hear that Americans, what have they done? We've been fighting their wars for Australia forever. We have sacrificed, we have bled for Australia over and over again. They don't deserve it. We're fighting their war for them. Again, I'm not a genius. I'm relying on Google, and I've checked a couple of sources, but a lot of these summaries tend to be relatively accurate from what I can see. Feel free to correct me online if you actually know what you're talking about. In fact, I would love to talk to you in an interview if you know more than me. Please, let's do. Reach out. Now, if we look at it, over 1,000 Australians have sacrificed their lives in American-led wars in the mid-20th century. And it was fascinating. I think it's something like 216 years of America's history they've been at war, right? Imagine sitting there and having the balls to say that some of these nations in the Middle East are the most warlike nations on the planet, yet your literal percentage of existence that you have been at war is rough maths, most of it, right? A wild statistic. But anyway, most of these wars where Australians have died are wars that if we sat back in Australia and did nothing, would never have reached us. The only reason we went and spent millions and billions of dollars on military assets, but more importantly, shed Australian lives. There are Australian military families that have been devastated because these people went to war, they fought, they suffered, and many died. Now you might think, 1,000. What's 1,000? You know, Australians, there's nothing. It's petty numbers. Well, let's flip it around. How many American lives were actually defended or died defending Australia? Now, you can manipulate these figures if you want to, because in the Pacific Campaign in World War II, was something above 100,000 lives were lost by the Americans in the Pacific in World War II. But the Americans will probably say, well, they did that defending Australia. And there is definitely, in the bombing of Darwin, with 113 Americans who died in that attack, right, where the Japanese hit us, that's valid. You absolutely lost lives defending us, and we appreciate it. We always have. We've kind of followed you into wars for the subsequent nearly 80 years because of it, right? I feel like we're kind of paying our debts with a little bit of interest, right? 113 of your lives versus 1,000 of ours. We're not sitting here saying you need to bleed more for us. We're not begging you to come to our rescue currently. But here is the thing. We're watching TV just like everyone else. A lot of it we can't believe anymore because the mainstream media worldwide, here in Australia as well, has become unbelievably corrupted and politically biased. Something is either completely powered by the radical left who have an angle, or completely powered by the conservative right or extreme right in some cases, which has its own angle. But the beauty of social media is that means we get to see more videos, we get to hear more opinions, and because of YouTube and the podcast networks, we get to hear significantly more people in expanded formats to hear the truth from them. Ex-generals. We get to hear from war heroes. We get to hear from analysts. We get to hear from people who are given a voice outside of the controlled outlets of the American and even the Australian governments, to be fair. Sky News, my God, what a piece of shit network that thing is. It is insane that you guys are saying we're not doing enough. We're seeing and we're watching. But here's what I worry about as an Australian. I think a lot of Australians are starting to think the same thing. What are we actually getting out of this? We've been sending a lot of Australians to your wars to die for a long time. And your wars, let's be very clear, we only sent them because we're mates. We bled for you, not me personally. I've sacrificed nothing. I'm a piece of shit, right? As many other people in Australia are. We have benefited from Australians going out fighting wars and building those relationships and shedding blood to forge our ties to your country, which we thought was enough to hold us as friends. But then you give us 15% tariffs, then another 10% tariff later on. Then you say we need more blood, we need more troops, we need more people, even though there is absolutely no interest for Australia in doing this. Everything that has been coming from this crisis has been from America. But we're watching and we're seeing that what you have called your allies in the Middle East, that your actions have created retaliatory attacks from Iran and Hezbollah and the other terror-sponsored groups, you are fleeing from your allies. You are running away. You are taking THAAD systems, missile defense systems, away from the UAE, away from Saudi, and sneaking them up to that other country because you've lost your bases there. There's nothing there for you now, so you've moved away. You've played your hand. You've shown people now that when push comes to shove, if there is no interest in America, that these mutual defense pacts mean nothing to you and you will walk away and you will continue to focus on your interest. So here in Australia, I think that there finally is conversations happening about, look, we want to be there for our friends. There's nothing more Australian than doing that, to show up for when one of your mates, when they're in trouble, right? You see this whenever there's a massive disaster in Australia, like a cyclone or a flood. Hundreds of thousands of Australian volunteers go out and help with the cleanup, even though it didn't hit their house. It is what we do, at least what I would like to think we would do. But the reality is, with your guy in office right now and your people, like the Hegseths of this world, right? These monstered out gym bros that don't know their asshole from their elbow. They don't care about us. They care about American lives. They care about the other guys' lives. And then there's nothing under that. It's just all dollar signs and skulls, right? Dead people and max profits. You're threatening your allies. You're threatening Greenland. You're threatening to annex any country that doesn't want to completely capitulate to you or happens to be a huge possessor of natural resources, oil, lithium, etc. And we're watching as our friends in Europe, in Asia, in all these other countries are starting to realize that the American empire is starting to fall. And we're worried about our friends. They're going down a bad path and we can't follow them. So we have to do something else. So you're starting to see these trade deals between us and Europe and us and Canada, which, for example, I think is a very, very good choice for us to make. We have to diversify our risk. It's smart for us to do so. We should be considering more trade options with countries that perhaps we've seen as adversarial in the past, purely because America made us so. Trump threatened after he made us rip up our multi-billion-dollar submarine deal with France, which cost us billions of dollars and really strained the relationship with the French, so that Trump could then sign a deal with us that he keeps holding off over our head, right? Billions and billions of dollars. We still don't have these submarines. And I think the recent threat somewhere last year, he said that if I'm going to give you these submarines, even though you paid for them, right? Even though you're an ally, I get to have some say about what you do with them. And that if we end up going to war with China, that I get to borrow all of your toys. And that you have to send troops and people over to participate in any war that I want with those submarines. In other words, you fully own them and pay for them, but I kind of get to do whatever I want with them. That's not what friends do. That is not what friends do. The reality is, we are not in a position in Australia, right, with our financial debt the way it is. We already have a gross debt of over $1 trillion. We already have productivity numbers that are going down. We have questionable unemployment numbers in Australia because in this country, we have underemployment, which is masked by unemployment figures. That technically, if you have a job, even if it's only for a couple hours a week, it still counts as being employed. It may be right on the poverty line. It may mean that you need 3 jobs to actually earn enough to be able to afford to rent a place, because the property market in this country is absolutely balked and so prohibitive to first buyers and single income families to be able to get into it that they're probably never going to achieve what was once upon a time the Australian dream. And it is dying. We can't physically afford to do that. And whether or not we participate in this conflict side by side with America or the other guys or not, we are about to eat absolute shit for America purely by existing on the same planet as them as they fuck the Strait of Hormuz, right? I am a moron, but just from playing a couple of RTS strategy games like Command and Conquer 1,000 years ago, even I know that if you have a choke point like the Strait of Hormuz and you want to make America pay if you get hit, shit, even I would have done some of what Iran has done right now. Not all of it, right? I'm a big fan of the GCC countries. But I think that whoever did the pre-analysis of this war for you guys in America is an actual moron. And what's crazy about this is it seemed like a lot of generals were trying to tell your government that this was not going to end well, that there was a lot of underestimations that have been made. There had been a huge reduction in the capacity to be able to fight this fight, especially in defensive missile systems, because you used a lot of them last year when Iran blasted Tel Aviv. And also obviously sending quite a few toys over to Ukraine. They were slipping this out. Generals were slipping and leaking all over the press. You know, everyone needs to know, tell them this is a terrible idea because the big guy's not listening. And we have to deal with Pete fucking Hegseth, who is basically, I don't know, 97% creatine, 3% fuckwit, right? I don't know, maybe, sorry, Pete, I don't know if that's your actual ratio. If it's a slightly different one, please accept my absolutely insincere apologies. The reality is right now, as you guys sit there in the US or on your armchairs here in Australia, demanding that Australia step up and do more for America in this conflict, remember this. We have shed far more blood for the Americans in wars of their own creation that would have never affected us here on the Australian soil, but we did it because we were friends. We give you significantly more, as in we buy far more of your products than you buy of ours. You throw one-way tariffs on us, even though we are great partners that have been very obedient little lapdogs of friends for such an incredibly long period of time and did not ask anything for return. You did defend us in the 1940s in a war that, to be honest, you weren't defending us until Pearl Harbor. Then you wanted to use Australia as a launch platform so that you could cut up through the middle of Australia, launch from Darwin, and you did sacrifice some lives defending that port, but you weren't there until Pearl Harbor. It was opportunistic for you that you joined that war, but we still appreciated it, and we still followed you for nearly 80 years because of it. But this is a war of choice. And as a friend, a good friend of your country, we have to say that this is a bad choice, that you are killing innocent civilians, that you are waging a war that is not only illegal in many eyes around the world, but is also potentially immoral. Okay? The reasons, you don't even have a good reason for being there other than, oh, I don't know, WMDs, or no, it's liberation of the people. But then the people that you're liberating, you're bombing, including their children on the first day of the war. So that doesn't hold up. So then you're like, oh, we'll kill the generals, regime change. And now you've traded one Khomeini for another Khomeini. And this one, you've killed his father, his wife, and at least one of his kids. And if some reports are to be believed, maybe you've scarred and injured this guy as well. You think he's going to be reasonable and open to negotiation? The former leader of Iran, the Ayatollah, had a fatwa, a religious declaration of war against the development of nuclear weapons in Iran. Right? He said, we're not going to do it. Do you think the new guy's going to do that after you bomb the absolute Christ out of his family? America, look, I'm not an Iran defender, right? I think that up until, you know, it's actually fascinating that you even make any of us to consider that Iran could be the good guys in this conflict, because they're not, right? There are wonderful Iranian people. The same way I'm confident that somewhere deep in your country, there are good Americans as well. But it seems like it's harder and harder to find them. They are not the good guys. But you have been so disastrously aggressive, arrogant, right? Not only to them, but to the rest of the world, of saying, look, this is our planet. Our dick is big, and we will swing it wherever you want, and you will open your mouth and say, yes, please. To which case, I would invite you, President Trump, Pete Hegseth, and any of the war hawks that are out there like Lindsey Graham, I would invite both of you to tongue both of my balls. And I'm sure Trump would be sitting there going, you know what? I do both balls. You know, some guys, they would only do one ball, but folks, I do two balls. You just see, I would take on two balls like no one else. I was just talking to Lindsey before, and he said, no one takes balls like you, Mr. President. You guys are a joke. You guys are not friends, right? You are not who you used to be. And it hurts. Like, that's why I think you're going to find so many of your allies, like Australians, are so angry right now, right? And disappointed, like I said at the opening of this. Because we want to believe that you're still the good guys. Because we shed a lot of blood for you guys thinking you're the good guys. And right now it's really hard to see what that is. So I hope that if there are any people in the room in your country that are smart enough to step up, and I'm so happy with independent media, like Ryan Grimm, if you guys have never seen anything written by Ryan Grimm, he, in my opinion, is one of the last true reporters on this planet. The work that has been coming out by him, and I wish I could remember the name of his organization, but I've been watching so many clips and reading so many articles from these guys, from the Epstein files to Iran. Like, I'm so happy that independent media exists right now, because without it, it'd be so hard to figure out what's going on, especially with AI on top of it. There are clearly voices out there that are trying to reach the president and to reach the war hawks of America that for some reason think this is a good idea. And we're heading towards this cliff now where you've got ground troops about to arrive. But I really, really hope that those logical heads will prevail soon, that you will figure a way out of this conflict. You will figure out a way to bring peace, at least some modern format of that, to the region, that we can get oil moving again across the planet and avoid what is otherwise going to be an international disaster that the entire planet, whether they like Iran or not, is absolutely holding you accountable, and the other guys that we can't really talk about in this country because they get arrested, because our politicians are cucked too. I don't know if we have an Australian APAC, but I'm starting to get real convinced that there is one, especially right here in Queensland with the Premier and the way that he is so focused on anyone saying anything bad about those guys. It is hard to know what to believe. But America, if you think anywhere down in the depths of your soul that we were friends or we are friends, listen to your friends. Mate, you're not doing okay. This is not a good choice. You are going down a bad path. Please rethink this. Please. I really hope that some of you guys have found this informative. If there's anyone out there who has facts and figures beyond what I've said today, if you're an expert on any of this stuff, I would love to talk to you, man, right? If it's in the comments, whether it be in a video or a conversation, I am just fascinated by the state of the world, and I'm fearful for my kids growing up in this modern environment. I have no idea what the right choice is for these kids, and I feel like just voicing this stuff just helps me make sense of what's going on in my own brain. But I hope you have a good day. I hope wherever you are safe, and I hope that you'll come back and join me another time. Cheers.